Last night, after multiple days of wrangling, the Senate has passed their version of the big relief bill, with a headline of it being $2 trillion, although that appears to hide more than it reveals. And that's just the Senate, bear in mind. The House is going to have to take this up, and so big changes could come. But Emma and I are going to break down some of what's in that bill, some of the big headline features of it. Don't worry about the water, Emma. It's quite all right. And so before we jump into the numbers, what's your initial reaction to what you're seeing so far from the Senate version of this bill?
So it's, I guess, marginally better than the insane GOP proposal that they tried to push through a few days ago. But what is frustrating, and Andrew Cuomo has been calling this out, which, I don't give credit to Andrew Cuomo a lot, but he's been a very visible voice during this time, perhaps the most visible Democratic voice, hint, hint, Joe Biden. And he has been saying that there's not enough money for state governments. And that's, I think, by design in many cases, because the Republicans are loath to give blue states like New York and California, who are going to be hit very hard by this. New York already is hit incredibly hard by this. That's why I'm in New Jersey, because I'm afraid to go back to Manhattan, to be honest with you. That I think that's, they don't really care as much about what happens there. But when it comes to red states, more rural states, they're okay with allocating kind of I'm not exactly sure how much money is allocated, if it's proportional or whatever, but my sense is that states like New York not getting enough money, they're okay with doing that kind of.
Yeah, and we saw as of at least a day or two ago that the Trump administration still hadn't made emergency funds available to Washington, New York, and California, the three states that have been hit the hardest, at least so far. But as to the Senate, why don't we jump into some of the details? There is a $500 billion loan program for businesses. Instead of giving the Trump administration broad discretion to make the loans, Schumer and Pelosi said there will likely be a new inspector general in the Treasury Department specifically to oversee these funds, as well as a congressional oversight panel to examine how the money is being used. That is designed to reassure us. I mean, the inspector general, okay, cool, and a congressional, panel that's going to convene to wonder why, like, I don't know, name a business, why they were given $20 billion extra dollars. They're going to ask some questions. It's going to be a news cycle for an hour. What, is the money going to come back? That does not reassure me. But I think that's what it was designed to do.
Well, it's supposedly marginally better than the Trump administration just being able to give out money to their buddies. But, it's interesting. Some businesses are complaining, like Boeing, we're seeing that they're upset at the nature of the money that they're getting. They're expecting and are hoping for just basically bailout money. When what's funny is that companies like Boeing are already partially subsidized by the government, and they're not happy that they aren't getting more and more.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the headline. I apologize. I think it was Boeing, but don't quote me on that. There was talk about the possibility that in exchange for dozens of billions of dollars, that the government could get some sort of stake in the company. And the CEO was like, no, if there's going to be strings like that attached, we don't want the help. Which implies to me, I don't think it's an emergency if you can just be like, nah, keep your $60 billion if you want a 10% share or something. That implies to me that you'd like the help, but you don't exactly need the help.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And don't quote me on the Boeing. I think it's Boeing, but I'm not 100% sure. Now let's go to some other numbers. So $25 billion for airline loans. I'm seeing $4 billion for cargo loans, $17 billion for national security loans. Basically, lots of billions. You should understand that. In terms of, because I'm seeing a lot of comments about when are regular people going to get their money, we don't yet know. Just bear that in mind. But the new bill will increase unemployment insurance by $600 per week for 4 months. This money is in addition to what states pay as a base unemployment salary. And so for a period of a few months, you'll get regular unemployment and then an additional amount of money. It wasn't immediately clear to me if that was only for people who were laid off directly related to the coronavirus, which sounds like that could be a bureaucratic nightmare for people to prove that that's why it was. But anyway, and we don't know exactly when this will kick in, but theoretically that will help some people. That helps those who were laid off. It doesn't necessarily help those who didn't have a job. There's a lot of other categories of people that this could leave behind.
Yeah, and they said there's supposed to be some sort of lag time for like a few days and that relief is going to be imminent, but they're not exactly saying when all of these provisions are going to kick in. Are they going to kick in simultaneously? Or checks going to be cut immediately? We're not exactly sure. Though that all still has to be worked out. But again, I don't have a ton of faith in the people who are implementing this kind of bailout money and how quickly it's going to get to the American people.
Exactly. So that's unemployment. In addition to that, the legislation would include a one-time $1,200 check that would be sent to most adults making $75,000 or less annually, according to their past tax returns. This is that 2018 thing that we've talked about previously. A $500 payment would also be sent to cover every child in qualifying households. And as of right now, at least, that is a one-time thing. So if this ends up being an 18-month problem, budget, because you might not be getting too much money.
Yeah, and that's larger than what the Trump administration initially proposed, which was $1,000 for every individual. But they didn't really specify. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think the initial Trump administration proposal specified $75,000 or. And so now it's $1,200, which I guess is fine, but that's different than what Bernie Sanders and Maxine Waters in the House were proposing, with $2,000 for every person, $1,000 for every child. So this is less than that, but at least it's going to provide some temporary relief. But the idea that it's a one-time thing, that is not enough to provide relief for people, especially, and once again, we'll bring it back to how little the Republicans care about large blue, especially in highly populated areas like New York and California. $1,200 doesn't get you a long way, especially if you're unable to make your. It's just not enough.
Yeah, I mean it's like if you do have to pay your rent, like that, the entire thing's gone, and more would already be gone at that point. Some additional numbers. Let's see. We've got $367 billion in loans to small businesses. $150 billion roughly for hospitals, with $100 billion going directly to hospitals, $1 billion to the Indian Health Service, and the rest to purchase of medical equipment. So that is something. I don't think that is going to cover the huge amount of medical equipment, both in terms of ventilators, but also personal protective equipment that has been requested. You probably saw the numbers, Emma. I think it was 40,000 ventilators New York is saying that they need. And the Trump administration is saying they sent 4,000. So far, New York has only gotten 400. And so, yeah, it sounds like we're going to need a lot of money. That's one state that now has over 30,000 cases of coronavirus documented.
And the Trump administration is saying that, the GM and Ford, they should start making ventilators. And they're saying, yeah, we'll get right on that, without specifically requiring them to do so, which he can't because of the, I'm forgetting the exact name of the Defense Act that he enacted. You have the power to enforce companies in times of crisis to actually make these types of equipment, and Trump is falling short there and not actually requiring them. He's just, as a PR, saying loudly, I'm getting the auto manufacturers to make ventilators and other medical equipment, when we know now that it's going to take months for them to even set the facilities to do so. So it's just a PR stunt.
Yeah. I mean, look, he already delayed multiple months in the beginning from making more testing kits available, or at least purchasing them, masks and things like that. We could have been gearing up literally months ago. And now, even when he's all mad that people are pointing out that he was slow rolling for literally months, he's not providing any sort of federal guidance on lockdowns. He's just letting states do what they want. Some are locking down, some aren't locking down. And he wants to reverse as much of that in a couple of weeks, which we'll get to. But also, he's not helping to either like organize the distribution of medical equipment or actually compel companies to start to produce it. So in every way possible, he is still, at this late date, dragging his heels and providing obstacles to addressing this rather than providing resources and guidance, which is obviously desperately needed. There's multiple states that are already in the middle of a disaster and lots more coming. He thinks that we're going to be done in a couple of weeks. This thing is still going to be accelerating in a couple of weeks. I did want to also let you know one problem that I have with the bill is right now it includes $400 million to prep for the 2020 election. The GOP had originally proposed $150 million, so they were able to get more than twice as much. The Brennan Center says we need at least $2 billion to prep for it. And so what I love is, like, how many times have we said X billion dollars in this segment? Billions of dollars of this, billions of dollars of that. They wanted to give $150 million to have an election. Like, the one thing that they're feeling frugal in regards to is our ability to have a general election without exposing more people to coronavirus come November.
But the reason they don't care about providing that funding is because voter suppression is always in their interest. So people coming out less, it always favors the Republicans, because the most likely voters are the Republicans and the older folks and people who are doing this as a part of their patriotic duty and routine, as opposed to unlikely voters, people mobilized to go and vote out the incumbent president. So they don't really care. They can be frugal about the election. It doesn't matter to them.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.